Well, hi there. This is H. Victoria Hogger Atkerson. I'm an author and a writer. I do historically based romantic novels that I think you will enjoy. Pick up one and try very hard to get them all. My latest one is this one, which is Enslaved. It will be joined by part two coming up in a few months. This is a wonderful book about slavery as it pertains to who we are as a people. We are artisans, professionals. We were warriors, princesses, um, people with skills who were forced to come to this country to work, and we were that was done without any consideration for our humanity. So it's really important that we take a look at this book because we talk about life before Africa. We talk about the long traditions that were there, a civilization that is thousands of years old. Africans were trading, making paper, writing the written language. They were making cloth. They were doing all kinds of wonderful things. The first library was in Africa. So we were the most intelligent people in the world during that time period, which we continue to be today. So that rich history is something we have to embrace and make it a part of our daily lives. There's nothing here that you need to be ashamed of, or anyone needs to be ashamed of. But we need to be able to acknowledge where we were so we can see where we're going in the future. And it's very important for our students and our children to know that history because it'll help them to empower themselves to be great, to be wondrous, and to teach them all about the heroes that came before them. Um, this is another book which is a favorite of many, Buttermilk Bottom, which talks about a neighborhood from my childhood. I was asked to write this book. I didn't know that book existed in my mind until my adopted brother, Larry Wright, read this, and he fell in love with the two characters, the number writer and the voodoo priestess, and he asked me to write something on them. It took me a while to get a grasp of what I could write about these two people and the neighborhood, because he said he was fascinated by the neighborhood. It was only a minor thing in this book, which is about a young girl. She looks white, but she's very black, and she was raised by a single mother, uh, and she had identity problems. But she found her life and her usefulness as she went in when she went into foster care. So this book talks about her life as she grew to maturity, but it also talks about how she threw herself into the civil rights movement, and it talks about and shows you what it was like to be at that mass meeting in Washington where Martin Luther King did that "I Have a Dream" speech. So take a look at it; it's a real good one. And Buttermilk Bottom, of course, is filled with all kinds of adventure, all kinds of experiences. Uh, there's murder, rape, there's spousal abuse, there is a wonderful story about two young children. There are even stories about ministers and number writers, gamblers, prostitutes, this house of ill repute, which is like the headquarters for everything in Buttermilk Bottom. Everybody went there to do whatever they needed to do. It was considered like a community center would be today, because everybody went there and everybody knew everybody's business and they were involved. So it's really important that we see that neighborhood as it was living under Jim Crow, because Buttermilk Bottom was one of the first places that blacks were allowed to move into after the Civil War. And for many generations of people, they never moved out. They stayed there for centuries. Well, yeah, for a century, because it was over 100 years old. So take a look at that. It's really great. This book Stones Along the Path is a wonderful bicontinental relationship. And it's bicultural because it's between an African and an American. And it talks about their tumultuous relationship, which ends up in part two with their two children. And then we go into part three, which will be out very soon, folks. It's a really great story. And one of my favorite things to talk about Stones Along the Path is that I was at church one afternoon and we were serving refreshments, and a couple of my friends were talking about this couple that was having all these horrible, horrible problems. And I'm trying to eavesdrop because I'm thinking that they are gossiping about somebody in church. Like, who are you talking about? Who is this? And they looked at me like, we're talking about Jessica and Akinyele. And I was like, okay. But I was so into eavesdropping that it just fascinated me. But to have them talk about that was really, really cool. You know, that you would write something that people would absolutely identify with. It was really thrilling for me as a writer. And I get letters from people who have different reactions to my writing, and it's wonderful. I don't care if it's negative or positive. It's really great. I just got yelled at on Facebook for ending the story enslaved before it was done, and not, putting a complete ending on it. So that's why I'm rushing to do part two, so that you can have that, you can see the ending, you can be content, and we'll all be happy again. Okay. So but part two is coming out next month, so be prepared and be sure to go to your bookstore and get it, or go on Amazon.com. It's also on Kindle, so there's no reason why you can't get them. They're very good stories, and I'm very proud to present them to you. So you must love someone special, and then most of all, from me to you, love to you. Take care and have a great one.